Hello and welcome to episode 50 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me, as always, is my brother, Ben.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome. Episode 50. Pretty exciting stuff, Ben, according to Sam.
Pretty cool,
According to
actually.
Sam,
I like 50.
weird math.
That's a nice number. I'll agree with you there, Sam.
Yep, according to Sam's weird math, it's a pretty cool one. So yeah, it's
Halfway to 100.
yeah.
Time in this many years, we'll be at 100 episodes, Sam.
Well, I was just doing some research before we got into this episode, and we started in June of 2022, so we're 2 months away now from 2 whole years. So it took us under 2 years to get to 50 episodes, which makes sense given that we release about one every 2 weeks. We have yet to miss that. We've had a few extra ones in there, of course. So just another 2 years, and we'll cross that 100 episode threshold, which will be pretty wild, assuming we're still doing this. And, of course, Ben, assuming Games Workshop, which we all know has killed this game, doesn't officially kill it. I joke. It has not killed the game. I'm poking fun at people who think that. But moving hastily back on a non-contentious topic, Ben, and that is, of course, alcohol. Never contentious.
Never a contentious topic.
But, Ben, tell us, what are you drinking? What are you drinking for this episode?
Well, Sam, for this episode, as always, I've gotten myself something extra special. I have myself a Dale Wine's Barley Wine. This high-gravity beer is chief among the king's beers and is said to grant the imbiber a heroic combat whenever Theoden is getting drunk nearby.
Ah, very good. Very good. Perhaps a heroic drinking more than combat.
Heroic drinking, indeed. And what about you, Sam? What are you having for this special 50th episode?
Well, Ben, I have steered away from the tried and true Gondor Calls for Ale associated with the army you're playing, because I'm having a drink long written and yet to be used, partially because the subject is oft banned, but also I thought for this special 50th episode we'd get something a little saucy in here, Ben, because I am having an Old Tom Bombadil, and you know what they say, Ben? They say this Old Tom Bombadil is a foamy fellow, dark brown this drink it is, made of hops of yellow. So there we go.
Delicious, nicely done.
It's no
I like the song that goes with it.
It's no troll beer, but
no troll beer, but pretty musical too.
Yeah, it does. It is also the master beer, Ben.
I have heard that of an Old Tom Bombadil.
So now we have demonstrated that I am in fact oftentimes known as the Taylor Swift of our times. I think we can move on into some Lord of the Rings related things, and that is, of course, what are we talking about in this episode, Ben? Do you wanna give us, me perhaps? You would know if you're telling us, me, the listener, the viewer, anyone else not sitting on a cushion. A little overview of what this episode is about?
Sure, I'll give you a quick overview. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about our first 3 games each of the Adepticon Grand Tournament, which is 750 points.
Yes.
In the Schaumburg, Maine at Adepticon. And importantly, Sam, we were sort of going into this one leading up, maybe even last episode, we were under the false pretenses, under the belief, because we hadn't read the tournament packet, that it was 5 games.
Yes.
And that we would be bringing you 2 games each, and then allegedly 3 games after that. But no. It was 6 games tournament, 4 games on day 1, and another 2 games on Sunday. So in this episode, we're going to be covering our first 3 games.
It was more games than my little heart desired, that's for sure. But hilariously, as the man who complained probably the most, not vocally, but complained the most about having to play a bunch of games, it actually kind of hilariously works out for me. Almost. Anyway, we'll talk about that as we get into this episode. I will just pause and say, did you say Schaumburg, Maine?
I maybe said Maine, but I meant hotel.
Okay, yes.
Got carried away, distracted, thinking ahead as to what I was going to say next.
Yeah. So yes, Schaumburg in Chicago. So yes, as Ben says, we'll be covering some games.
Schaumburg, Illinois, even.
Yeah, or anyway, whatever. Someplace in this fine country known as the US of A. Covering some games, fantastic. But Ben, before we grab our models, grab our dice, grab our army lists, we're going to talk about those dice that we've grabbed, and that is, of course, the perfect time to talk about our sponsor, the Baron of Dice. Not the Duke of Dice, not the King of Dice, but the Baron of Dice, which we all know is the highest tier of dice you can have. And these beautifully poured, hand-mixed resin dice, Ben, that are perfectly balanced, guaranteed to only roll sixes, except when they roll anything that's not a six, can be yours, Ben. And these dice are supplied, as we have said a few times, by the Baron of Dice. You can find a link in the description of wherever you're listening to this episode for a link to take you to that website with a promo code, which is, the promo code is capital G, capital C, capital A, and that will get you a nice discount on those dice, Ben. And these dice are used by many competitive gaming teams and are the official dice of many national tournaments. So we at Gondor Calls for Ale highly recommend. We use them ourselves. They are fantastic dice. There is, of course, a Lord of the Rings or War for the Soul Ring section on the website where you can find dice that match your factions. If you like to have a set of dice for each army you have, the Baron is the one to do it for you. All right, so with that sort of rambly, tongue-in-cheek endorsement, sponsorship message, we'll move into some armies, Ben. Let's do this.
Ooh, before we move into armies, yes, I want to shout out a big thank you to the Baron, but also a big thank you to all of our Patreons.
Yes.
And if anyone else is interested in supporting us on Patreon, we've got some extra episodes and some other interesting content over there on Patreon. And a big thank you to all of our Patreons. We wouldn't be here without you. We do appreciate you. This episode is in part paid for by Patreon, I think. So we used some of our Patreon stuff. Anyway, yeah, so thank you, Patreon.
Yeah, we used some of the money we got from our dear Patreons to help pay for the cost of the hotel, which is awesome because it's not cheap. Also, to note about Patreon and both the Patreon and the Baron of Dice, we have awesome custom-made Gondor Calls for Ale dice, matte black and red with those nice square corners, the best, the most beautiful of dice, that if you join our Patreon, you can get a set for free. If you would like to purchase yourself a set, you can, of course, send us a message. All right, I think we're now covered, and now can we move into the army lists?
Absolutely, Sam. Well, since you're so game to take us away with army lists, why don't you tell us about your army list?
Yes.
There it is.
Yes, there it is. A beautiful army list, Ben. Let's hear a little bit more about Sam and a little bit more of my voice. So here we are playing Helm's Guard, arguably the greatest army in Middle-earth. And, of course, leading the army. This is a 750-point army, 750-point event. Hopefully I wasn't playing over or under. No, leading the army, we have Helm Hammerhand on horse, of course. And he's got 5 Royal Guard on horse with throwing spears. He's got 6 Royal Guard on horse with, or not on horse, Royal Guard on foot with throwing spears. And this is a change, as often recommended by Ben. I have 1 Rider of Rohan with banner in his warband. That's the change. He's moved from a captain's warband into Helm's warband. Fantastic. He, of course, comes with a bow and a shield. I believe they come with both of those things stock. Then, next warband, we have a captain of Rohan on horse with heavy armor, shield, and throwing spears. Can you move back? Because I don't actually have my list memorized. He's got 7 warriors of Rohan with throwing spear and shield. Warband 3 is another captain. Also heavy armor, horse, shield, and throwing spears. He's got 2 Royal Guards on foot with throwing spears and 6 Warriors of Rohan with throwing spears and shield. And then the final warband is a King's Huntsman with 6 Outriders of Rohan. They are not actually riders, they're walkers. They didn't bring their horses. They're scouting cautiously on foot is how I'm imagining it. And this was my first time moving or trying those out. You will now feel free to show some pictures of the army if you want.
You gotta love the good old Outwalker of Rohan. It's kind of a shame that people don't take the horse all the time, but I do think it's the better option. Just a guy, would they hit on a 3 and they're the same points cost as a regular rider of Rohan or warrior of Rohan, but they don't have the shield or something?
Yeah, they hit 1 better, but they're worse defense. And I think they're the same points cost. Yeah, I wanted to try it out. I have some dudes with bows modeled. I think this army is, I don't know. It's not 750 points is not the best option for it. I don't have enough models to make it the army I would perhaps want to do. I really need to make some more mounted Royal Guard and just some more Royal Guard in general. So, but King's Huntsman can be nice, and we'll have to see how he does throughout this event.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. Well, I will take us onwards into my list. I also have Rohan, and I have here myself the Riders of Theoden, Sam. In Warband 1, we have none other than Theoden, King of Rohan, with armored horse, shield, and heavy armor. In his warband, there are 2 Royal Guard on horse with throwing spears and 1 Rider of Rohan. In Warband 2, we've got Eomer, Marshal of the Riddermark, with armored horse, shield, and throwing spear. In his warband, there are 2 Royal Guard with throwing spears on horse and 1 Rider of Rohan. Then we've got Deowine, Chief of the King's Knights, with 2 Royal Guard on horse with throwing spears and 1 Rider of Rohan. And then in warband 3, we've got Gamling on horse with the banner. In his warband, there's 1 Royal Guard on horse with throwing spears and 2 Riders of Rohan. And finally, we've got Durnhelm with throwing spears and 4 Riders of Rohan.
Yeah,
So a total of 9 Riders of Rohan, 7 Royal Guard, all of them have throwing spears, and 5 heroes, 6 if you count little old Mary.
Yeah, you and about everyone else at the Adepticon brought the Riders.
Oh my god, it happened to me again. I went to another big tournament and there were a bunch of people with the same army.
Should have just played.
There were 7 Riders of Theoden, which is more than the Azogs at Nova. I think there were 6 Azogs at Nova, and this time there were 7 Riders of Theoden. So whatever I play next time, I'm sure there'll be 8 of them.
Oh, is that what you're calling? It's the Ben Gallagher. What am I trying to think of?
I don't know, the power game. The power gamers pile on. I don't know.
The whatever you play, everyone plays. There's I don't know really what I'm trying to say, but yes, there was a lot of them, which is a bummer because it's kind of an annoyingly good army, and I think it's pretty miserable to play against. But anyway,
that's fair.
I also don't think it's an army. You have more riders than a lot of people do, but it's like it's a weird one, right? Because the Legendary Legion is supposed to be representing the big charge at the Battle of the Pelennor, and all people do are like, here are my 5 to 6 heroes, and like I have 20 guys, and you're like, how many spears did he bring? Less than half of what he hoped is the answer, right. But it's certainly was more than 20-something models. So that's, I wish it was an army that the death rule benefited the troops or something. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not. Yeah. Anyway, I think playing against all hero armies is just like not very fun most of the time, and this just happens to be a really good one as well. Anyway, so that is my hot take on why Ben's an asshole.
Yeah, well, fair enough, and it did work out fairly well for me, and I think a lot of the other Riders of Theoden players. Yeah. I tried to give at least some of my opponents at least a chance to kill some of my heroes during my games because, secure the win and then let them kill your guys. That seems good.
Yeah. But actually, Ben, before talking about securing the win and then being fun, we should mention, of course, the Gondor Calls for Ale tournament bingo. Which
we should. I should have put a slide in here for that.
Which we had a number of people participate in, came up and asked us for bingo sheets, which is fantastic. We ended up not giving out the award at the end of Adepticon, so anyone who participated at Adepticon and anyone who is yet to participate, make sure that you send us a message wherever saying that you participated. If you want to send us a picture of your bingo, that's fine. I think the bingo needs some tweaks. I think there were some of them that were really difficult to achieve. So I think basically if you participate, period, we'll just do a drawing to give away some very cool dwarven coins, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me wave in front of the camera now. Cool dwarven coins. Anyway, so yeah, definitely send us a message and we will do a cool drawing for that. So I think we can move into some games now.
All right, so yeah, let's take it away. I'll start off with my game 1, Sam.
Yeah.
So I was playing against Will, and he brought the Host of the Dragon Emperor. So he had, of course, the Dragon Emperor. Then he had a Dragon Knight on foot and Rutabi.
Okay.
And, of course, many Easterlings, many of them with the Black Dragon upgrade. I think all of the ones in the Dragon Knight's Warband and the Dragon Emperor's Warband obviously get it for free. And he also had a Cataphract with a drum.
Of course.
Rounding out the Warband. I think it was about 36 models. And I don't know if we mentioned this, Sam, but Adepticon was the veto system,
Alas,
and we were vetoing out of Pool 2, which is the hold objective scenario pool, and we ended up playing Breakthrough.
All right, I'll give us a quick run through of Breakthrough. Of course, if you are viewing, you can see the deployment on the screen. If you're not, it's a 24-inch up deployment zone. There are 4 objectives, 2 on the center line and 2 each in the center of the players' deployment zones. We have the objectives. The game lasts until the turn in which one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. And then we've got some scoring victory points. We score 1 victory point if there are more friendly models than enemy models within 3 inches of the objective in your own deployment zone. For each objective on the center line of the board, you score 1 victory point if there are more friendly than enemy models within 3. If there's at least 1 friendly model and no enemy models, instead score 3 within 3 inches. Instead, you score 2, and then you score 2 if you have more friendly models than enemy models within 3 inches of the objective marker in your opponent's deployment zone. If there's at least 1 and no enemy models within 3 of that one, you score 4 victory points. You also score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. If you kill the enemy leader, instead you score 2, and you score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. There we go, Breakthrough. Did you break through, or were you broken through, Ben? Tell us. Tell us all. Keep no secrets.
All right, so deployment, I'm going to run through it pretty quickly. I decided to deploy Theoden and Daelwyn together off on my right-hand flank, with Dernhelm, Eomer, and Gamling holding my center, sort of left-hand and center flank, and the Easterlings will put down all the Easterlings in a big clump in the middle of his board. And for those of you not viewing, we were playing on this cool desert board with some rocky outcropping formations and 4 scattered buildings with stairs that you could move up and down. If I was Will, I'd have been hiding up the stairs all game, that's for damn sure. He had, I think, 2 bows in his army, maybe 3 bows in his army as well. And Will takes first turn priority and drums the drum, and he moves forwards. And I basically moved all of my riders around a little bit so that my riders were going to be holding my back objective or maybe running off to one of the flank objectives. Dernhelm and Eomer move within throwing spear range of the Easterling battle line, and Theoden and his force move off around the flank, threatening the flanking group of Easterlings near this hill. Will takes second turn priority and sounds the drum again, and the Dragon Emperor runs forwards with his warband pushing hard towards my back objective, but leaves a small screen of guys near Theoden and Daelwyn, who both charge into combat on that flank. And all around the screen of Easterlings that the Dragon Emperor left, I'm able to throw, between the Easterlings, I'm able to throw Dernhelm, so Eowyn and Merry and Eomer into the Easterling cataphract with a drum. And the rest of my army chuck some throwing spears. We kill the 2 Easterling bowmen, and in the combat phase, we get into some really good stuff. I call 3 heroic combats this turn, Sam. So if anyone's following along with the bingo sheet, I've already scored death without calling death. Merry calls a heroic combat. Theoden calls a heroic combat, and Daelwyn, because Theoden is in combat, calls one for free. So Theoden and Daelwyn mop up the 6 Easterlings they're in combat with. I think they kill 4 between the 2 of them, maybe 5 between the 2 of them. They didn't each get 4. There was not 8 killed. And Eomer and Eowyn obviously kill the cataphract they're in combat with and go shooting off towards the back Easterling objective, which leaves us into priority. And I should say, between those 3 heroes and some throwing spear kills, I killed 8 models this turn. So the Dragon Emperor turns around. Will takes the next priority, and the Dragon Emperor and his warband mostly come charging backwards. Rutabi and her warriors come still pushing towards my back objective. And there are some Easterlings holding my leftmost objective. I think there are 6 Easterlings sitting there, and I've got a handful of Royal Guard riders standing around chucking throwing spears, waiting for their opportune moment. In this turn, we got a move is called by Daelwyn, I think, so that I didn't get charged by the remaining Easterlings, and Daelwyn and Theoden go back into combat. I think he also got Aomer, so Aomer gets into combat as well, and we get some more killing this turn. Obviously, Theoden's in combat, so Daewine gets a free heroic combat, and we kill another 5 Easterlings. And now we're getting into facing off with the Dragon Emperor and the Dragon Knight. So Will takes turn 4 priority. So he's won all of the priorities so far. And I call a move with Gambling, which Rutabi tries to master a battle, does not get the master of battle off. So that move goes off, and I'm able to basically. So hang on a sec. There's a lot going on here. Let me think back. So that's Gambling is behind the Dragon Emperor, calling a move near Rutabi, and near the Dragon Emperor, the Dragon Knight calls a move because Theoden is also calling a move, spending another point of might over there. And I don't remember who goes first. I think I went first and was able to move Gambling and Dernhelm into the back of the Dragon Emperor. So then the Dragon Knight goes next and charges into Theoden and moves an Easterling into combat with Daewine, which then leaves me just Aomer left and a couple of Royal Guard who move into the remaining Easterlings in the back. So we get into some good stuff in the combat phase. Theoden is fighting the Dragon Knight, and the Theoden strikes. The Dragon Knight does not. Fighting the Dragon Emperor, we've got Éowyn and Merry, who so both Merry and Éowyn strike. Sorry, not Merry. The Dragon Emperor and Éowyn both strike. The Dragon Emperor wins the strike off and puts 2 wounds on Éowyn, and she saves one of them, but takes another wound. So she's out of fate and takes 1 wound. Theoden wins his fight with the Dragon Knight and puts 1 wound on the Dragon Knight, which is pretty nice. I finally win a priority, and the Dragon Knight calls another move. So I counter move with Éowyn. She's now spent her last point of might. And Éowyn moves first, which is perfect for me. And basically this turn, I just pile all of my heroes into the Dragon Emperor. Theoden goes back into the Dragon Knight. And in the combat phase, I win the strike off against the Dragon Emperor, and I'm able to put through enough wounds that I remove the Dragon Emperor and the Palanquin in one go. He's trapped, and I had Gambling, Éowyn, Daewine was fighting an Easterling, calls a heroic combat, goes into the Dragon Emperor, and then Éomer into the Dragon Emperor. So the Dragon Emperor is killed this turn, as is the Dragon Knight. And some unknown number of Eastlings. At some point, I stopped keeping track. And because on turn 5, Will is broken at the end of this turn. So the Dragon Emperor is dead. The Dragon Knight's dead. We've just got Rutabi left and a handful of Eastlings. I have lost about 6 riders at this point, so I'm not broken, but I'm getting close. I've lost about a third of my army. So I threw Éowyn into Rutabi, and in the combat phase, we get a nice Éowyn and Rutabi fight-off. Éowyn has gotten a point of might back from Gambling. We get a strike-off. Rutabi wins the strike and kills Éowyn and Merry this turn. On the left-hand objective, I send my Royal Guard and Riders into the 6 Easterlings that are holding that objective, and they beat back my Royal Guard and Riders and kill 2 of them, leaving me only 1 guy by that objective. And there are 10 Easterlings left at the end of turn 6, which means he is 1 away from being shattered. On turn 7, I take priority, and Éomer goes into Rutabi. We get some more fights. Rutabi and Éomer fight. Rutabi wins the fight and puts 3 wounds on Éomer, and he has to spend all 3 of his fate, failing 1 and taking 1 wound. And the game ends on this turn with me controlling 3 objectives and Will controlling 1, and obviously the Dragon Emperor dead and the Easterlings broken for a 10-1 victory.
Very nice, very nice.
So definitely felt the power of the Riders of Theoden there. I will say, I think when he split his army up and basically let me eat it in little pieces, not to mention getting Dernhelm and Éomer into that drum, squeaking them through a gap into the drum and then going into the backfield with them, was pretty big for me.
I mean, this is a pretty hard scenario to not have to split your army up in some amount, and it kind of doesn't matter how many, you have to be you can't even splitting it in half, right? You have so many heroes and your whole army is so fast. There's sort of not much you can do except okay, come and fight my 1 force of my army, and you can just be like you could let him march his entire army over, take your backfield objective, and you still win the game. So
Sure. Yeah. That's fair. When Theoden and Daewine were chomping through the Easterlings on the back flank there, he had moved the Dragon Emperor more than 6 inches away from them, so that they were fight 4 Easterlings.
sure.
You know, he definitely could have left the Dragon Emperor a little bit closer to at least make them fight 5, which means I'm either striking, maybe I'm thinking about striking rather than calling heroic combat.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right.
Well, Sam, that was my game 1. Tell me all about your game 1.
All right, Ben. I was playing against Preston, and we were playing Capture and Control, which, of course, if you're a viewer, you can see the funny deployment zone on the screen.
All right, so while I find Capture and Control...
Scenario
Capture
9.
and Control, Scenario 9. All right, so we've got an interesting deployment zone. As Sam said, we can deploy all the way up to the center line, but before you deploy a warband, you have to roll a dice. On a 1, 2, or a 3, the warband must deploy within 12 inches of the center line. On a 4, 5, or a 6, the warband can deploy anywhere it wants. Excuse me. And this game ends on a 1 or a 2 on the end of a turn in which one force has been broken. And there are objectives too, Sam. We have 5 objectives. We have 3 evenly spaced down the center line of the board, the long center line, although we were playing on 4x4 boards at Adepticon, so that all center lines. That's 3 spaced down the center deployment zone line, and then another 2 12 inches in on the center of the 12 inches up line. Describe that terribly. It looks like the 5 pattern on a dice. There are 5 objectives. You control the objectives. At the start of the game, all of the objectives are considered to be neutral and do not belong to either side. If during the end phase of any turn, one or more of your models are in base contact with an objective, then that objective comes under your control. If during the end phase, both sides of models in base contact with an objective, then that objective returns to being neutral. You score 2 victory points for each objective marker under your control at the end of the game, 1 victory point for wounding or killing the enemy leader, and 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken. So it's all about those objectives. And what was Preston playing, Sam? Tell me all about it.
He was playing an alliance of Harad and Far Harad. So he had Suladan and Raza, and then 2 Mahood kings on camels, and then a bunch of half trolls was the other sort of part of his army, and some riders, whatever the Serpent Guard on horses called. We were playing on a cool deserty board. If you wouldn't mind just holding off on flicking through any more of these pictures, Ben, so I can get into this game. So we were playing on this deserty board, so I was obviously bringing the snow with me, and we would see if I could turn the desert to winter or if I was going to melt. So turn 1 priority. So deployment, I went kind of standardly. I made sure not to be within 10 of most of the board, as did Preston, so we sort of like had a bigger gap in the middle, because essentially this game only the roll only matters if you want to deploy in that like farthest back section of the board.
Sure.
So basically I had Helm on the right hand, a bunch of guys in the center, and then like one of the captain with 2 Royal Guard and some dudes off on the left objective. And I did not play overly well in this game. I certainly didn't deploy well. Helm should have been more central. But turn 1 deployment goes to me. I back up a little bit to make sure that I'm out of range, kind of expecting him to move forward so I can take some throwing spear shots. Nobody kills anyone this turn, so a massive waste of time, really. Turn 2 goes to me, and Suladan calls a move. I don't counter call. We get some charges in, and it doesn't go overly well here. We've got Raza calls a combat, a Mahood king both the kings call a combat. I think turn 1 I was able to take one of the kings off his camel with the king's huntsman, which was pretty nice. Helm uses
you can see him dismounted in the picture.
Yeah, Helm uses a strike for free. He wasn't in combat, but with all of these other characters calling combats around him, it's free. I might as well call it.
Sure.
My banner is killed, and I lose a total of 13 models this turn, and only kill 2. So it goes absolutely terribly for me. Turn 3 goes to Preston. Helm calls a move, as does a king. The move goes to you. Helm gets engaged in combat. The lines sort of relock. On the left-hand side, Suladan and a bunch of riders get into my sort of defending force. He's already taken that objective, and they, alas, get very much wiped out. Oh, I should say, turn 2, I not only lose my banner, I lose one of my captains and the King's Huntsman. So turn 3, we get into combat. Helm calls a strike, which he has to spend a point of his might for, because I believe Raza is... So Raza gets into... is spear supporting into him. And Raza has named Helm as his target.
Naturally.
And Raza calls a strike. I am 99.9% sure that you cannot call a strike and add your combat as a spear support, or add your fight value as a spear support. I am convinced of this because I had a conversation with Jay at Nova 2 years ago, and I was asking him if he was ever like foolish, if he was ever like, I write the rules, this is how it's done, and he was telling me a story of how somebody tried to do that with Ganburigan, and you can't do that. Couldn't easily find it in the rulebook, so I was like, fine, whatever, man, you can have it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't... I mean, essentially, I was like... And I told him, too. I was like, this is why I think this. And I was like, but what that is, I can't find it in the book. And what this is some guy saying, well, I know that Jay said that this... Which is not the basis to make a tournament on. I was already, like, down a whole bunch of models. So I was just like, I don't care enough to call a judge over. I had a quick look at Strike, and it doesn't spell it out there. And couldn't be bothered to waste any more time looking for rules. Helm had to spend another one of his might from his store to win the fight. I get 2 kills and lose another 4 models this turn. Turn 4 also goes to Preston. I call a move with my 1 remaining captain. The move this time goes to me. I think the captain was sort of more central, so wasn't able to get Helm. I re-engaged. Helm is... once it doesn't get the charge, but is once again in combat because he uses his free strike. Again, has to spend 1 to win. So Helm is now down to just his mighty hero. I lose another 9 models and only kill 1. Helm, I mean, I think at this point Helm's fighting like a bunch of half trolls, and so he's, given that he's not charging them, he's not killing them. Because Raza also struck again as well. Turn 5 goes to you. I was down to very few models. There was no real point in calling a move with Helm because I was going to need it for the strike, which Helm calls the strike. I think I won and I killed another half troll, but lost another 4 models. Turn 6 goes to me. Woo woo! And this is the first time. This is it. If you're viewing it, you can see the final combat. This is the first time in the game Helm gets the charge, so I'm all excited. He's finally getting those 4 dice. He's got a chance, so he uses his free strike, and then he proceeds to roll a 3 high on his fight, and loses and gets killed. And I lose. And it was a major defeat, 12-0. So, not a great start for the event. It was a fine game. Like I said, Preston was an enjoyable opponent. He played well. I played very poorly. This is a terrible, terrible matchup for me because he's got a bunch of the Fight 5 half trolls, so my Fight 5 isn't hugely advantageous. I should have just been in a big clump, and, Helm isn't going to, he's going to make sure he gets a half troll or Raza or somebody into Helm where I'm having to call a strike and not getting the free combat, which actually was, kind of the story of this whole tournament. There was so much Fight 5 or higher in this tournament that I was attempting to go for the Gondor Calls for Ale tournament bingo of I myself am sitting pretty on 43 because I thought over 6 games Helm had a pretty good shot at that. Started really badly by only killing 3 this game, so hopefully he improves. But an overall a good game, and now I'm well on my way to playing people who aren't in the chance for the run or aren't in the running for anything. So should be some chill games.
All right. All right, onwards into my game two, and I was playing against Andy. I think it's funny. I just want to say something about Andy's dice, Sam, because you always talk about the Baron of dice with the nice square edges, nice square corners. It's like one of your favorite talking points about those dice. You like the nice square corners on your dice. Andy did not like square corners on dice. Andy rolled D12s that had 1 through 6 on them printed twice. So every single roll was this long suspenseful of the D12 rolling across the table for way longer than it needed to every time. And it made for, especially early game when I was taking some shooting casualties, it made for a very stressful, very stressful rolling situation. Anyway, so enough about Andy's dice. Andy was playing an army that I thought was actually really cool, which was a Lothlorien force with the three brothers, Haldir, Orofin, and Rumil. And we were playing Scenario 4. We were playing out of the Kill pool, so a good pool for me and my cheesy riders of Theoden. So we were playing Scenario 4, Sam, which is Lords of Battle.
Of course, Lords of Battle. A very straightforward one. It's got a 24-inch up deployment zone. And the game lasts until a force has been broken, and then on 1 or 2 it may end. We've got some scoring victory points. For this scenario, you need to keep track of your wound tally. Your wound tally is equal to the number of wounds your army has inflicted upon your enemy's army, plus any fate points your opponent has spent. Hero models that are removed from the game with unspent fate points will add 1 to the wound tally for each unspent fate. Models that flee because their force is broken count towards the wound tally. Mounts that flee do not. You score 3 victory points if your wound tally is greater than that of your opponent's. If your wound tally is at least twice as large as your opponent's, then instead you score 5. If your wound tally is at least 3 times as large as your opponent's, instead you score 7. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. If you kill the enemy leader, instead you score 2. You score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. If the enemy force is broken and your force is unbroken, instead you score 3. And we have a single special rule that I always forget about. And that is, of course, a time of heroes. Each time your force kills an enemy hero in a fight, one of your hero models in the same fight, your choice, regains a point of might lost earlier in the battle.
I also read this scenario and then immediately forgot about that rule. Shame, because I definitely killed some heroes with my heroes. What a surprise.
Well, you get a free point of might back anyway, so you don't need any more.
Yeah, it's true. I've got might for days. I got a lot of free might in this army. So he's got we were playing on this woodland board. We've got some woods around. We've got some ruins and elves in woods, and horses don't like woods. I was a little bit stressed out. He had the three brothers, obviously, so 3 warbands. 2 of the warbands were sort of combat-oriented, with both of them had banners, and then a elf spear wall, shield wall, with a handful of the Fight 6 pike elves, the guard of the Galadrim court, I think. Yep. And then the 3rd warband, which I think was Rumil's warband, but I'm not 100% sure, was largely just elves with Mirkwood cloaks and bows, so they were just hiding in the trees and would, of course, be invisible, not only to my shooting attacks, but any charging that's more than, is it 6 inches away from them?
Yes.
I believe it's 6 inches away on the cloak. So I basically deployed all of my army in a clump. He deployed 1 warband in the woods, and then I deployed a warband off on the right, and then he deployed a warband to the left, and I deployed another warband to... I'm sorry. I deployed my warbands to my left. I'm having a dyslexic moment here, Sam. I deployed my warbands to my left. He deployed a warband to my right. And then I deployed another warband to my left, and he deployed his 3rd warband to my left as well. So there's his army sort of spread out over the board a little bit, and I proceeded to deploy the rest of my army into a clump. And then we rode forth from one wood to the next wood on turn 1. I took priority, and in an attempt to get as many of my riders behind the trees as possible, I just, rode forwards as fast as I could, and he opened fire into my forces. I took 2 casualties this turn and lost a horse as well, which horse wounds do count for Lords of Battle. So Andy is up by 3 points on me already. I take turn 2 priority, and the rest of my army continues riding forth along the edge of the board around this clump of trees, trying to put, I think it's Orofin's warband between myself and the bows, as well as these trees between myself and the bows. I did not do a fantastic job of taking pictures for this game, so there are only going to be a few here. So I take turn 2 priority, we ride forwards, I take another 2 casualties, but manage to, and another horse casualty, Sam. So Andy now has 6 kills, but I managed to inflict 2 shooting casualties of my own on Orofin's warband. And turn 3, this turn I would love to win priority instead of losing all the priorities. Also, instead of winning all the priorities, I would have loved to have lost the first 2. But Andy takes turn 3 priority, so Eomer decides to call a move, and Orofin does not counter move. So we go 4th, Eolingas. We can't get the whole warband in. Most of my army was sort of strung out behind these trees. I was only able to get Eomer in, and I think a handful of Royal Guard. In the shooting phase, Merry is almost shot off of Dernhelm's horse and has to spend a point of fate and is able to resist it, but that's another point for Andy. And in the combat phase, I also got Theoden into combat. I think Theoden actually managed to get into combat with Orofin because Theoden calls a strike and Orofin, I guess, doesn't have strike. So Theoden wins the strike off and manages to kill Orofin this turn. He's only 2 wounds, 1 fate. Theoden just put enough wounds onto him. Eomer also calls a strike because he's fighting a bunch of elves, has to spend +1 to win his duel against a bunch of elves, and is able to kill a couple of guys this turn. I get a total of 6 wounds or fate points spent, however you want to tally it on this turn. And Andy gets 4 this turn, so he is still ahead by 4 points to me, I think, at this point. I take turn 4 priority, and we mop up the rest of Orofin's warband this turn. Most of my heroes are calling strikes. Darewine's getting his free heroic combat. Sometimes, you're fighting 5 elves, you just risk the heroic combat, and you go, maybe you got 1 elf. Maybe he'll get the heroic combat off. So Darewine calls his free heroic combat, kills a couple of elves, and I take, between shooting casualties from those Mirkwood elves, not able to get all of my guys out of line of sight, not able to get them all into combat. I take another 3 casualties this turn, and I think another horse casualty because I've got another wound marked down as well, and I kill 4 this turn as well. Haldir and his warband have been running towards me at this time as well, and he is approaching combat but isn't getting close enough. So I take turn 5 priority, and Haldir is getting close enough because Haldir calls a move this turn. So Gamling calls a counter move, and the move off goes to me. So we just charge in. This is the turn, Sam. We get all the heroes in, as many of the Royal Guard as possible, and I call death this turn. And we kill 9 elves, not including Haldir. We do, Haldir has to strike. I believe he's fighting Eomer. So Haldir strikes, gets up to 10. Eomer strikes to a 1. But Haldir does not get the 6. So Eomer gets a 5, I think. I think Haldir maybe got a 4. Yeah, Haldir got a 4 high, spends a point of might to get to the 5 because Eomer's at a 5. Eomer spends his last point of might to get to the 6 and wins the fight against Haldir, but doesn't manage to kill him. Takes a point of fate and 1 wound off of him. Turn 6, priority goes to me, and Rumil calls a move, and I counter call with Gamling again, and Rumil goes first this time, so the elves come charging back into me, and we get a whole bunch more strikes as my heroes are striking to fight 6 elves and fight 5 elves. And once again, Eomer is fighting Haldir. Eomer gets a point of might back from Gamling this turn, I should note, Sam. Very, very important. There's my free point of might. And he strikes up and kills Haldir this turn. Although that is my only kill this turn, and I lose 4 riders to those pesky elves. And Andy was stabbing horses, so he got 6 wounds this turn. Which takes us on into turn 7, where Rumil calls another move, and I counter with Gamling's final point of might, and Gamling gives a point of might back to Theoden, who is out of might at this point. But, King of the Mark, he's got to be striking, Sam. We can't have him brought low by elves. The rest of my heroes are expendable. He's worth victory points. So we get into some more combat, and Theoden's striking, Darewine's striking, and Eowyn striking, and they each manage to kill 1 more elf this turn, so we get another 4 kills and take no casualties, which takes us on into the final turn of the game, turn 8, where I take priority. Rumil calls a counter move, and I am out of might largely on everyone. Oh no, I'm sorry. I give Merry gets a point of might back, and calls a move, but Rumil wins the move off. The elves re-engage, but it is not enough. We are able to kill Rumil this turn despite his dual roll. I believe Theoden got 2 6s.
Nice. The
classic. Sweet Horse Lord dice. He got 2 6s while in combat with Rumil, which, the parry rule that he has just isn't good enough. Theoden was on fire for me this game. He had a great game. I killed another 6 elves this turn, and the game ends with 19 wounds caused by Andy and 40 caused by me. So I just double him, as well as him broken, and I am not, and all that. So this was an 8-1 victory for me.
Very nice. Very nice. Not bad. Not bad. I guess he.
Yeah, the first couple of turns of shooting where he was killing 2 guys and a horse a turn and getting 3 kills, and these dice that just kept rolling. He would roll them and they would roll. It was very stressful.
Yeah. I guess he should have just put everyone in a wood.
Oh, absolutely. And I would not have begrudged him that at all. That's what I would have done.
Yeah.
And again too, like Rumil's warband and Orifin's warband, the 2 combat warbands. I think I said Haldir's warband was a combat warband. Haldir's warband is obviously the shooting warband because he's the shooting brother.
Right.
Duh. Anyway, so the 2 combat warbands came at me one at a time. I basically got to deal with one and then deal with the other one.
Gotcha.
Which even if he wasn't in the wood, just basically we were on even numbers, which is great for the cavalry.
Yeah. Wow. So 2 major victories starting out, Ben. Not bad.
Yes. Just go through the last of these terrible pictures that I took. And onward, Sam, into deployment for your game, which was also Lords of Battle.
It sure was. Lords of Battle. So no need to go through that scenario. I was playing against John, who was also playing Lothlorien, Ben. He had Galadriel leading his army, and he had Rumil, and then the often told tale of Theodred with a handful of Royal Guard joining the elves as they do battle in Lake Town, because that was the board we were fighting on. Yes.
Oft time I heard it said that Theodred rode forth with the elves. In fact, I know there was another army that had Theodred with the elves.
Yeah.
And at the last tournament that I went to, there was an army that was called 2 Brothers and a Dead Man, and I think it was Haldir, Rumil, and Theodred.
Nice. Yep. So yeah, we were playing on Lake Town. I did a much better job of deploying this game. I started by deploying a captain and his warband on my left-hand side, and then I think I put the other captain sort of in the middle, and then the King's Huntsman, if you're looking, you can see they were sort of just at the front. King's Huntsman, his outwalkers, just in the front of the building. And then I sort of realized as he was deploying, he had a reasonable number of elf bows, and he deployed more on my left side, and he had Theodred and his warband on the right side. So I determined partway through deployment I was just going to blob helm behind this other captain and the King's Huntsman, call a march, and just send everyone forwards and try and get rid of Theodred and this warband, and then hide behind and get out of some of the shooting of his elves. So that is exactly what happened. Turn 1 went to John, which actually kind of worked out for me because it's easier to hide from bows when they can't respond to your move. But I did call a march with one of my captains and shot helm and all of the infantry around and all of the riders straight towards Theodred's warband, and the King's Huntsman and his warband just sat in the back. I left a channel for them to shoot at Theodred and his warband, and then my other captain, who wasn't in the march range, just sort of started walking up, ducked out behind this Lake Town house so they couldn't be shot at, and I was like, I'm going to slowly start moving them over. We do get a little bit of shooting here, and I shot into the Royal Guard. I definitely took Theodred off his horse, and I think I killed one of the other Royal Guard, and maybe dismounted another one as well. And Theodred rolled a 1 on his Throne Rider, and then rolled another 1, so he was actually prone. Don't think he took a wound, though. Turn 2 went to me, and I have here that Rumil called a move, but then I've crossed it out, so maybe he didn't. Either way, basically what ends up happening is I'm able to get Helm into combat with a Royal Guard, and I get like one Royal Guard into Theodred to keep him on the ground, or maybe I get a couple, and then Helm into combat with these other Royal Guard. We get into the shooting where John has started moving his warband. He like moved them, half of them moved up, and he just unloaded into the King's Huntsman, even though they were in the ways, and he actually killed the King's Huntsman this turn from shooting, which was a bit of a shame. But
they were like, vengeance for Theodred's horse, take that.
Exactly. But that's okay, because Helm causes free combat. He does have to spend a point of might to win the fight, but cuts through the Royal Guard, and then I think I considered going into Rumil, but decided that Rumil has the higher fight, and it just wasn't worth it, so I think I just go into another... Maybe I go into Theodred as well. I think I probably go into Theodred. Win the fight against Theodred, and then don't roll terribly well, because I think I only do 3 wounds, and Theodred uses his 1 point of fate and rolls a 1, so he does have to spend all 3 of his might, but he's alive with 1 wound, which is just like sort of not ideal. No. I would have been nice to kill him, but I do get a total of 4 kills and only lose 2 models this turn. Turn 3 goes to me, and now Galadriel has pulled towards the side, and I believe that's what this picture is showing. You can't see her because she's behind a building, and she transfixes Helm. So so Helm charged into... Oh no, Rumil used a move and charged into basically our lines locked. Helm is either charged by Rumil, or Rumil charges, or he must have been charged by Rumil. So maybe Helm didn't go into Theodred. Who knows? This was a while ago. But importantly, Helm gets transfixed by Galadriel. I decide to, on a 6, Galadriel rolls a 6. I decide to use 2 points of Helm's will, which was kind of silly. I either should have used all of them or none of it on the 6. I used 2, rolled the 5, forgot that he hadn't used his Mighty Hero yet. So I was like, guess he's transfixed. I could have used the Mighty Hero to not be transfixed. That was a mistake. But that's okay. Rumil calls a combat. I think he's fighting Helm, so I was like, shouldn't kill him. Something would have to go terribly wrong. Actually, I don't think it's even possible. Maybe he was backed up by a couple pikes, but Helm, I don't know if he wins the fight or not. Doesn't die. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think he even takes a wound. But I do lose 5 models this turn and only kill 1 in return. So the kill count is starting to equal out again. Turn 4 also goes to me, and Helm is transfixed again on the 6. I think this time I decide not to use his point of fate, or his point of will to resist. I have 1. He's rolled the 6. There's like not much point. I think that's the case. But we get some other fights. Because it's gone to me, I'm able to... I put Helm into some elves, I think, but I'm able to keep him away from the fight 6, Rumil and the hero. So this turn I kill 4 models and only lose 1, so that's quite nice. Turn 5 goes to me. I call a move because I'm getting dangerously close. I'm sort of like collapsing his flank that's protecting Galadriel. I'm getting dangerously close to being able to charge Galadriel, so Galadriel calls the move. The move does go to him, and she once again transfixes Helm. I think this time I do roll his will, but don't get it, because Helm doesn't call anything later in the turn, so I'm assuming Helm is once again transfixed. But I only lose 2 models and kill another 5. So turn 7 goes to me, and my other captain is like finally, and his warband is finally starting to get towards the combat. So turn 7 goes to me. Galadriel calls a move. Helm calls a move. I believe the move goes to me. Helm slams into some elves. I am able to... There's like 1 Royal Guard who's able to charge into Galadriel, so Helm's not going to be transfixed this turn, which is nice. I kill Helm calls a free strike because he's probably fighting a guard of the Galadrim Court who's higher fight. Either way, he's tied and they all have elven blades. Like, I'm not using my free combats often in this game, so he's calling the strike. I kill a total of 5 models and lose 4. Turn 7, that was turn 6, I think. Turn 7 also goes to me, or maybe that. Anyway, whatever. Basically, I think that was turn 7 actually. So turn 8 goes to me. We have the same thing where this time Rumil uses his last one to call a move, and Helm calls a move. The move goes to me again. We get a much killier turn this time. It's now I'm starting to outnumber the fights and starting to really win. I kill Rumil and a total of 8 models this turn, only losing 1. I think I also, it's either this turn or the previous turn, or either this turn or this turn 9, which is the last turn of the game. I believe one of my captain is able to get into Galadriel and kill Galadriel.
It was the captain that killed
I believe it was, yeah.
I heard me assuming it was Helm. He talked about killing this Galadriel.
No, I believe it was a captain because she's got 1 attack, -1 to her dual roll. I'm still mounted, so knock her prone. It doesn't, I think I got a bunch of models in there actually, and did more than maybe it was Helm. No, that was anyway. I fought 2 Galadriel, so it's a little hard to know. Importantly, Galadriel dies. I win the last turn priority. I get 4 kills and don't lose anything. The game ends, and it ends up being 41-19. So close, but I do manage to double him, and it ends up being a 10-1 victory. So a major victory for the forces of Helm Hammerhand.
Nicely done.
Yeah, definitely another army with the same fight as me. So Helm not getting the free combats was a shame. This time he did slightly better. He killed 5 models and he spent like 4 turns transfixed. So not bad, but not even close to the 43 I need.
Nice. Well, good game.
Yeah.
Elves is another tricky one for Helm for sure. But nice use of those Lake Town buildings.
Yeah. All right, should we get into your final game for this episode? This is going to be a long one. Not as long as the tournament was, but or that first day of the tournament, but it will be a long one.
Absolutely. All right, so onwards into my game 3. I was fighting against Preston, Sam's opponent from round 1, who of course had Suladan and the Mahud Kings, with I think 6 half trolls. I think he had like 4 or 5 serpent riders, and then a mix of I think about 9 Haradrim bows. All of the bowmen had spears, razas in there, and we ended up playing Seize the Prize. Sam, I got the final veto. It was vetoing between this one and a different one. This is this one and a different one. I can't even remember what the other options were. And you know what, Sam? My thought process was like this. It's like, do I play the swingy scenario or not? I was like, I'm feeling lucky. I'll play the swingy scenario.
Sure.
So we played Seize the Prize.
All right, Seize the Prize. The other options, of course, were Retrieval or Destroy the Supplies.
I think he vetoed Retrieval. Or did he veto Destroy? Anyway. He vetoed
Who's to know? It was this one or another one is what your choices were. All right, Ben.
You got me. It was this one or another one. It'll either rain or it won't.
All right, it will be Seize the Prize, and it will be me reading Seize the Prize. You have 12-inch up deployment zones, nice and easy to talk about. You are, as you can tell if you're looking at the deployment map, required to have a river on the right-hand side. Not really, I joke. Anyway, so we have objectives. This game lasts until a turn in which one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. We have special rules, which we'll go through them first because they become relevant to scoring points. You have the artifact. The artifact must be dug out of the soil. I should say the artifact is in the center of the board. The artifact must be dug out of the soil before it can be carried anywhere. An infantry model who is in base contact with the artifact marker at the end of its move may attempt to free it. Roll a d6, and on a 4+, the artifact has been freed. The artifact is treated as a light object. Might cannot be used to influence this roll. Only one model from each side may attempt to pick up the artifact each turn. And then we have some scoring victory points. You score 3 victory points if one of your models is carrying the artifact within your own board half. If one of your models is carrying the artifact within your opponent's board half, instead you score 5, excuse me. If one of your models is carrying the artifact and manages to move off the board edge via your opponent's board edge, then you score 7. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. If you kill it, instead you score 2. You score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. If the enemy force is broken and you are unbroken, instead you score 3. There we go. Seizing the prize.
All right, so seizing the prize, the most important part of seizing the prize, Sam, I think, is to win that first turn priority so that you can call the heroic march and use your 15-inch move cavalry just to move up the board and really just, seize that prize. Unfortunately, I did not win first turn priority. Preston won first turn priority, so Suladan calls a march and one of the Serpent Riders goes riding forth, dismounts from his horse and rolls a 3 and fails to dig up the relic, and the rest of the Haradrim and Far Haradrim force just run forwards.
Follow up.
We get no shooting casualties this turn. I leave my archers completely stationary so that all 9 of them can just open fire into the Haradrim, and all of my Royal Guard run forwards. As you talk about the terrain a little bit, we're playing on an Asgiliath ruined board, and because this whole fight happens around the objective, the only terrain feature that actually matters is there's one of the original ruins that came in that very first box set just to my right hand flank of the relic, where the walls are tall enough that the infantry models need to make climb tests to be getting over them. There's one low point where they can get through, but the cavalry models can move across them much more easily. So there is sort of once you're on the relic, there's this building that sort of blocks movement back and forth from one side or the other. And I've got most of my Royal Guard in that building trying to stay out of line of sight of the bows. All of my heroes are behind Royal Guard so that they're also not going to get shot. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't worried about bows. I ran all my heroes up as close as I liked because he had moved everyone forwards. There were no shots this turn. Anyway, but I did not get any shooting.
Did you call a move? Sorry, I've been trying to ask that for a while.
Oh, no, I didn't call a move. There's sort of no point because I'm 12 inches away from the relic. So if I call a move and go first...
You call a move and a march, go first. You have a banner that Mary calls the move and refresh it, and he's got 1 might, so next turn he gets it back.
Right. But you can't be part of a heroic march and a heroic move at the same time. You can only benefit from 1 heroic action per phase. You can't march and move.
All right.
Yeah. Otherwise, I totally would have done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just move up, chuck a bunch of throwing spears, shoot a bunch of bows, get absolutely nothing this turn. But I do take turn 2 priority, so Suladan calls a heroic move, and I counter move with Mary. Obviously. We get our 1 might hero out of might so we can use that gambling banner. Obviously, we do that, Sam.
Check that.
And the move goes to Suladan. So the Haradrim move up past the relic. One of the half-trolls moves onto the relic and rolls a 1 and fails to dig up the relic. I was obviously outside of charge range, so he didn't get to charge me this turn. And we go in with all of the heroes. We send Deowine and Theoden onto my left-hand flank. Eowyn goes into a half-troll and gets a wound with the throwing spear, which is pretty great. And Eomer heads right for the relic like he's going to go kill the relic bearer. He goes into another half-troll. In the combat phase, Theoden calls a heroic strike. Deowine gets his free heroic combat. Eomer calls a heroic strike. And Eowyn calls a combat because Merry has already spent his point of might. So Theoden, Eomer, and Eomer are both fighting half-trolls. And Eowyn is also fighting a half-troll, but Eowyn's decided to call the heroic combat. So Deowine's free heroic combat goes first. He has to spend a point of might to win that fight, and he kills one of the Serpent Riders that's off on that flank, and then goes into another Haradrim and kills him too later. Eowyn and Merry manage to win their fight against the half-troll, knock it down, and take its remaining wound, and then go charging into Suladan this turn. We do not win the fight against Suladan. I did win the fight against Suladan, but completely failed to wound him or his horse, which was a bit of a shame. But nice to have successfully heroic combated off a half troll. And between all my heroes, between Eomer, Theoden, and Eowyn, we managed to kill 3 of the 6 half trolls this turn, which is pretty big because they're the big fight 5 threat that I'm worried about with my little puny fight 5 horde of heroes. So I take turn 3 priority, and once again we get a move off. This time it's Raza who calls the move, and the move once again. Turn 3. I finally win the move off, but I'm not able to get anyone into the relic. So I win the move off. The relic is still screened off, and we charge back into combat. I send Eomer into Suladan. I send Theoden. Last turn, he was all the way on my left-hand flank, and he gives a fight bubble to my forces. So what had happened last turn is all of my Royal Guard who had been in the building on that left-hand flank had fought one of the Haradrim kings. He rode into the Royal Guard, killed 3 of them, and then killed another one in combat. So I took 4 casualties last turn, and then there's a couple of half-trolls over there. So the fact that my Royal Guard will fight 4 was looking pretty bad. So I sent Theoden back round to the center. Eomer goes into Suladan. Eowyn and Merry charge into the other Haradrim king. My remaining Royal Guard on the right-hand flank charge into the other Mahud king. And we get into some more combats, and this is the turn where I call death. So Theoden strikes up to fight against the half-troll who is standing on the relic. Another half-troll, I should say, Raza, backs up behind the half-troll, supports the half-troll fighting Theoden, and Raza attempts to dig up the relic and rolls a 2. So Preston has now had 3 attempts to dig up the relic, Sam, and is yet to unearth it. Turns out Haradrim not so good at digging in cobblestone.
I was going to say, I have an update, Ben. I haven't been paying attention at all to what you're saying. I am correct.
I can tell.
You are wrong. You can only benefit from a heroic action of each type once per turn. However, you can call a move and a march with a different hero. The hero that calls the move obviously has to move first, doesn't get the benefit from the plus range because the previous model has yet to call at the double, and any model that is within 6 inches of both have to end within 6 inches of both heroes, but do get to move first and get the extra move. So you could...
I misread that paragraph.
Have another model direct, all the cavalry, leave a gap. So you'd have to set it up, and this is the only place I can think it actually matters. But you could move, and then because 6 inches, you will be able to still go the full 15 because you'll have a 16-inch range. So
yeah,
now you know. Next time you...
Oh, no, I know. Interesting. That could drastically have changed this game. Oh, so interesting.
Sorry, to derail the...
Oh, yeah, no, totally derailed. All right, so we get into turn 3. We get into combat. I call death this turn, and Theoden strikes up against his troll. Eomer strikes up against Suladan. Daewine calls another combat. He gets his for free because Theoden's fighting, but he's part of death. He's participating. Gamling is also fighting some people this turn and calls a heroic combat, and Eowyn calls a heroic strike against the Mahud King. The Mahud King she is fighting calls a strike. The other Mahud King, who is on the other flank, who is fighting my Royal Guard, who are now fight 5, a tied fight with the Mahud King, he also calls a strike. Suladan also calls a strike, and Raza also calls a strike because he is supporting behind Theoden. So lots of strikes, not so many combats. So we get into Daewine has to spend 2 points of might to win his heroic combat, so he is now out of might. He spent 1 to win his first heroic combat of the last turn, and spends 2 to win the heroic combat this turn, but he does, of course, get some kills, which is good. I believe he takes care of another troll for me. Gamling wins his heroic combat and kills another 2 guys. This was important because it helped me peel some warriors off of, I think, Eomer. Then we get into the big and important strikes. Eomer versus Suladan. Eomer strikes to a 2, and Suladan strikes to a 1. And I win this fight, but I'm unable to do anything to... Once again, unable to do anything to Suladan. Now, Theoden strikes up to 7, and Raza strikes up to 1. So, and I believe Raza's target, we talked about it at the end of the game, I believe Raza's target was Eomer. So Raza is lower fight than Theoden, and Theoden wins his fight against Raza, and has to spend another point of might to kill the half-troll that he is fighting. So we get another 4 kills this turn and lose another 2. I should mention, too, that the Mahood King, the final Mahood King, who was fighting on the left-hand flank, fighting against my Royal Guard, struck up to a 1, so he was just barely higher than the Royal Guard. He's fight 5 base, so he managed to kill a couple of Royal Guard over there. And Eowyn and Merry fighting the other Mahood King strike up to 7. And they get a 2 on their fight roll. The Mahood King gets a 6, so he goes up to a whopping fight 10, but does not get the 6 and has to spend a point of might to win his fight. So that Mahood King is now out of might. Suladan is out of might, and Raza is out of might. So Preston is down to but a single might on the board with the remaining Mahood King, which gets us into turn 4, where Preston takes priority, and me, Sam, sitting on my buckets of might. I give a point of might back to Merry, who I spent a point of might with 2 turns ago and didn't have Gambling nearby. I moved him out of range of Gambling when I called a heroic combat after Troll and went into Suladan. But now Gambling's back in range. We give a point of might to Merry. Merry calls the heroic move, and I do not... I go first. That's right. No, Preston moves first. Tell a lie. Preston moves first. The lines re-engage. We all tie back in. Merry and Eowyn are dehorsed by the Mahood King as he charges in with his Impaler hit, but I spend a point of fate and I'm able to save the horse, so we're not dehorsed, not yet. And the final half-troll moves on to the relic and rolls a 1 and fails to dig it up for the 4th time in a row.
Nice.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Better to be lucky than good, that's what I've always said.
Yeah.
Not saying that you're not good, but...
No, I know. So we get into the combat phase. Eomer is still fighting Suladan. I've been forgetting to move the pictures through here. Eomer is still fighting Suladan, but this turn he strikes up, doesn't get the... Obviously, Suladan can't strike, he's out of might. Eomer doesn't get the 6, and Suladan wins the fight, takes Eomer off his horse, and puts enough wounds on him that I have to spend 3 points of fate. I'm not sure if I spent 3 points of fate one at a time on the horse, as he stabbed my horse repeatedly, or what happened, but Eomer came off his horse, and Merry and Eowyn also come off their horse, and Eowyn is killed this turn by the Mahood King. The +1 to wound from that war spear on the charge is pretty devastating when you're just a defense 5 hero. But little Merry managed to pass his point of fate and is standing brave against the Mahood King. He went in for vengeance next turn in an attempt to hamstring that camel, Sam. We'll find out how that went for him. Meanwhile, Theoden is fighting against Raza and kills Raza this turn, which is pretty great. Theoden strikes up, kills Raza. And then next turn, Sam, a big turn, I take priority. The Mahood King calls his last move. Gambling uses his last point of might to call a move. Gambling counter moves. The move goes to me, and Theoden King, Gambling charges into combat to back up Eomer. Theoden King vaults off his horse, moves to the relic amidst a horde of half-trolls, or not really, I've killed most of the half-trolls, amidst a horde of guys, whoever's still over there, and I dig up the relic on a roll of a 4. It's been well loosened by the Haradrim, and Theoden picks up the relic.
Slippery.
Yeah. And over the next few turns, I'm able to break Preston, and Theoden is able to, because I've now got all the might and he's out of might, I'm able to call the moves, and Theoden is able to chop through the battle lines. I break him 2 turns from now, and Theoden is able to cross into his board half. And I win this one, an 8-1 victory. It was a really, really good game, really close. I mean, totally... I guess I didn't realize that about the march and the move. Like I said, that could have changed the game. But as it turns out, Preston just couldn't roll a 4. He had 4 opportunities to roll a 4 or better, and couldn't dig up that relic.
I mean, obviously, if you had called the march and the move, he would have done the same thing. But might is so less important to you than him. And if you win that and then win the next move off, you have such a faster army that you can basically hide and then zip off. So you won, so it didn't matter. Don't know whether it's the right thing to do. I think I probably would have done it if I'd known how that interaction worked, just to make them spend a point of might early in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
You're just I'll get it back, But
good to know for the next time I ride forth with the Riders of Theoden.
Yeah. All right, then. Excellent. So 3 games, 3 major victories. Is that the case?
That is the case. All right, Sam, take it away onwards into your game 3.
I also was seizing the prize in this game, Ben, and this is where I was, as I mentioned an hour or more ago at this point, for a man who complained a lot about the tournament, it almost worked out super swimmingly for me, because between rounds 2 and 3 we had a 2-hour lunch, which was quite nice. However, I had some food and some drinks and was very sleepy and was like, man, I really would just like to be taking a nap or doing something that's not thinking about playing a game. And, Ben, this is what happened. My opponent didn't show up. And my opponent was there for me, so I went to the judges after it'd been a couple minutes and said, hey, my opponent's not here. Like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, fingers crossed, they're just going to be like, take a bye. But they were like, come back in 6 minutes, and if your opponent's still not there, we'll figure it out. I come back, say my opponent's still not here, and they say, you'll play the ringer. So that was going to be fun, and I started writing it all down. He came over to the table, started unpacking his stuff, and he was playing a super themed The Hobbit's Journey to Rivendell. So he had Aragorn. I believe he did have Anduril, so I think he was
Okay.
I think he was he had Glorfindel, Gildor, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, and some like Noldorian exiles and stuff. And I was like, ooh, for a ringer, this is going to be a real struggle for me. And yet, after I had written it all down and we'd started chatting, Ray comes over to me and says, hold everything, hold your horses. This guy over here, his opponent has also not showed up, so I ended up playing somebody else, who was, I felt a little bit bad. Not that this really means anything on round 3, but he was like several tables below me, so I think he'd lost his first 2 games, and I had won 1, lost 1, right? But he was playing, so I had to cross everything out on my score sheet. He was playing more Lothlorien. So he also had Galadriel, he had Celeborn, and he had Rumil. In his army, he had a couple Sentinels, he had a couple of Galadrim Knights. He didn't have Gildor, that was the other person. That's very confusing now. And we, as I was saying, were playing Seize the Prize. We were playing on sort of a woodsland and some ruiny board. The prize was buried at the feet of the statue, quite obviously.
Oh, nice.
Left there for the Rohan to find. Turn 1 goes to my opponent, whose name is Lee. I believe Lee was who I ended up playing, not the ringer. I believe it was Lee. And he called a channel with Galadriel, and I called a march with one of my captains.
So he has no march in his army to do the stupid march onto the
I guess
thing, right?
not. Yeah, it must not. But he also, I think he had 4 or 5 cavalry, so he wouldn't have been able to get there with the infantry. He would have been sending like 4 models up. Yeah, I don't know if you would. I guess you do it anyway, right? But
I would.
So I would have used Helm's free move though, because I know.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
You
so
know the rules better than I in this case.
or I just made that assumption and was only able to back it up right now. So I, as you can see from this picture, if you're watching on YouTube, I called the march with the captain, hurled my army forwards. One of my, made a wall of Royal Guard. One of them hopped off his horse, dug the relic up on the first try. I had another one who was like touching in base contact, ready to receive the relic. Galadriel, of course, used her channel for a blinding light, which went off naturally. And I think he shot a bunch of my Royal Guard off their horses, like a bunch. You can see if you're looking at this picture. There's a dude up in the front rank who's got a bow. It's because I ran out of dismounts for Royal Guard. So he's one of my extra King's Huntsmen. So turn 2 goes to Lee, and he moves up and he transfixes. I was like, oh, great, this is going to be, Helm's not going to do anything, but he transfixes the relic bearer. So Helm is prepared to do something, but I sort of like didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, nice, well done. We get some fights here. Helm goes into a couple, like 2 elves off on a flank, calls a strike, and kills them both. I kill a total of 4 models this turn and only lose 1. Turn 3 goes to me. We get a move off. The move goes to him. He moved with Galadriel. And once again transfixes the relic bearer, which is fine because he's starting to get like kind of dangerously close. I then notice that he's got sort of Galadriel. You can't really see it if you're looking at this picture. You can just about see Helm in the back, in the back of his line, and I notice that he's got Galadriel sitting pretty unprotected, and he's got one warrior kind of in the way, and I'm able to get because since he called one the move off, he like moved all that part of his army. He had the other side left, so I was able to get a captain and Helm into one warrior. So the captain calls the combat. Helm calls the strike for free. We win the fight, kill the one warrior. The captain goes into some other elves. Helm goes into Galadriel, and strikes higher than a 6, or it sort of like doesn't even. I guess it does matter, right? But he strikes higher than the 6, or higher than the 6, wins the fight, and then does 8 wounds because he needs 2s. And just
nice.
Galadriel just out of there. However, I do lose 5 models this turn. I think Celeborn spends a point of might to win, and he cuts through a couple, and I only kill 2 models. Of course, one of whom is Galadriel. Turn 4 goes to me, and I'm like, yes, at last, my relic bearer is going to get out of here. It's going to be glorious. But no, Ben. Celeborn calls a move, and I was like, oh, he's just going to try and get people around, but I think I should still be able to get out of here. And my captain, who called the march in the beginning, and is now, who I think was fighting Celeborn or was on foot, who was right by him, calls a move as well. The move goes to Lee, and Celeborn picks up his will and transfixes the relic bearer. He's got transfixed too, but he uses like 2 of his 3 will or something, so there are only a few turns left of him being able to do that. Celeborn just bounces off my captain. I think he wins the fight, but needs 6s to hurt him. Doesn't do anything. I get 3 kills this turn. Celeborn had to spend another point of might to even win that fight, and then he didn't do anything. Rumil called a combat and spent a might to win, but didn't do anything again. Helm called a strike to kill whatever elves he was cutting through in the back. Or maybe Rumil was fighting Helm. It doesn't matter. I don't lose any models but kill 3. Turn 5 goes to him. My King's Huntsman is now close enough to where his move can affect people. He calls a move. Lee is either out of might or decides not to call one this turn. So I'm finally able to get my relic bearer out. He passes the relic off to one of my knights that was dancing around. He can't move that far because has to stay within 6 of the King's Huntsman, but I am able to basically get him out of the way. And Lee's got one Galadrim knight like running onto the side to try and play intercept. Helm calls a strike and loses his fight and takes a wound but passes his fate, which is nice. I kill 2 models, lose 2 models. Turn 6 goes to me. Helm calls a strike again. I lose 4 models but kill 3 models, and I think at this point in time my knight, which is not in any of these pictures unfortunately, I didn't do a very good job of taking pictures in this game, gets charged by I must have been the previous turn.
The one with the relic?
Yeah, get charged by this Galadrim court. Luckily I have like 2 or 3 other models over there. And either he doesn't win the fight or he wins the fight but isn't able to do anything. And then the next turn I get the move and like trap that knight, and my rider shoots off into the distance. Turn 7. There's sort of like not much point in going through the rest of this. Turn 7 and 8 go to him, but Helm, one of my huntsmen calls a move, then Helm calls a move. Turn 9 goes to me, and on turn 9 he gets at a certain point he's got like 4 archers who can shoot at this relic bearer, and or maybe he doesn't even get that because I'm able to stay outside of 24 because they're so far over, and I get my relic bearer off the board. I manage to kill Rumil. I do eventually lose a captain, but this ends up being a 12-0 victory to me.
So, nicely done.
Yeah. So yeah, it was, he did a fantastic job. It ended up being closer for longer than I was kind of expecting after I dug it up on the first turn. I was like, I'm out of here. I didn't even think about the Relic Bearer being transfixed or anything.
Right.
And then once Galadriel was dead on turn 3, I was like, well, now it's definitely over. And then Celeborn transfixes him, and at that point, his line was had just a few models blocking off my Relic Bearer. So if I'd lost a few more models and then, hadn't got those move offs or whatever, it could have been different. But it was a good game. Lee was a fun opponent, and I got a little bit lucky, and he misplayed putting Galadriel there. Like, that would have made a huge difference. 18-inch transfix. So had he just even held her back and had a couple turns of transfixing the Relic Bearer, but it is what it is, and it was what it was,
absolutely.
and it was a major victory to Helm.
You had to seize the prize first turn that I was hoping for.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it. The first 3 games of Adepticon. I am sitting pretty on 1 major defeat and 2 major victories, and you were, of course.
I am riding fourth Aeolian gas on 3 major wins.
Or is it Aeolingas? Who knows?
Aeolingas, yes, indeed. And crushing hopes and dreams from cheesy Riders of Theoden.
Yeah, and
I will say, having played the Riders of Theoden a little bit, I am inclined to take out one of the heroes and add more warriors.
More fun for everyone, I think, Ben.
No, I think it's actually better with despite the fact that you're encouraged to have all the heroes because of the death special rule.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do just think it is more fun for your opponent. I mean, you can take Royal Guard and make them wound on 6s, but at least you have a chance to have higher fight than them, and you might actually kill some models. But when what you're fighting is mostly heroes, even when you win and get 1 wound, they're just like, I'm a good hero. I have a bucket load of fate,
Yeah, actually, I guess 2 of them have a bucket load of fate, but most of them are 1 fate heroes.
Okay. Either way,
yeah, you're right.
They're all defense 7 or more, except for Eowyn or Dernhelm.
Eowyn and Gambling are D5. The rest of them are 7.
Right.
Yeah. 50-50.
It's yeah. Anyway, doesn't clearly very good, and both all mounted, which can be frustrating to play, and all hero or mostly hero, which is also frustrating to play. But yes, Ben, yes, we're happy that you're winning, even if you're playing an army that I don't love. And sad that I am doing slightly worse, but we're turning it around, Ben. We're turning it around, and we're going for a long episode here, because we won't even be cutting stuff out, so we're going to be close to that hour and a half. And before we end this long episode, we need to talk about where you can find us next. So Ben, where can we find you?
So where will you find us next? I think the next place you will find us, as previously mentioned on our last few episodes, is of course the Richmond Open, which is on the 4th and 5th of May, starting off with the Grand Tournament, which is 800 points. The top 8 players will continue on day 2 to play another 800 points. Maybe I'll bring the Riders of Theoden and you'll see me there. Maybe not. We never know. But you'll definitely see Sam at the second breakfast tournament, which is 500 points on Sunday. Much more chill.
I feel like you're saying I'm going to not be in the top 8.
Oh, no. I feel like I'm saying that's the one that you're excited for.
That is true. But I feel like you were just like, yeah, Sam's obviously not going to be in the top 8. I'll bring
wasn't meaning to fire shots there, Sam.
Nice. Yeah. No, that is 550 points is definitely something I'm excited about, though I'm less.
Oh, apparently now you're excited to be in the top 8.
Well, I don't want it to be assumed that it is an impossibility. But yeah, it is exciting. It's going to be a good event. Rob Loader runs a fantastic event. I am slightly less excited about the 550 points because I'm currently not painting a new army for every event. So, it can't be the trolls plus 135 points worth of something else. Alas, but we'll figure something out fun and unique. And then, of course, after that, also in May, I believe on the 18th and 19th, we have Big Trouble in Little Dale, which is not actually in Dale, it's in Portland, Maine, which is a 350 point, I think is it 6 games over 2 days event, or is it more?
I think it might be 7 games.
7 on a scale from 1 to 6. You R7.
I think it might be 4 and 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're small points games on small tables. That's exciting. You'll be running a funny multiplayer four person free for all.
Three-person free-for-all. Battle for the chocolate coins. Yeah. You've got to run to the middle of the board. You've got to dig up dragon gold. You get given chocolate coins, which you can eat for no benefit other than deliciousness.
Oh, there should definitely be a benefit. It should be tied.
Maybe there will be.
It should be tied to the number. You need coins for victory points, but you can eat one for like a re-roll or +1 to a roll or something. So you sacrifice your victory points for a bonus right now. It's my kind of shenanigans.
That's a good idea. Maybe we'll throw that in.
And then after that, I think there is not much currently on the schedule until we get to the Nova Open, which is sometime in August and September. No, August and September. Yeah, I was right. Nailed it. First try. I know when the months are. Over Labor Day weekend, that is, with the grand tournament of 1,000 points, which is
the grandest of tournaments.
Not my favorite thing. And of course there'll be doubles, and Ben and I will be there doing general shenanigans.
The real question, Sam, is why is the doubles not 1,000 points? We should talk to Devin. 500 points aside for doubles.
Yeah. Or do the opposite.
We can do the Grand Army of the South, Sam.
Do the opposite. 250 points aside for doubles. 500 point double games, 1,000 point grand tournament. Anyway, so that is basically where you can find us. You can, of course, find us on the internet. You can find us on Patreon. Look at that. I didn't see that coming, did you? Which we would obviously greatly appreciate you taking a look at and considering subscribing. Get yourself some dice. Check out some other episodes. Listen to our beautiful voices talking about other things. But if you don't want to do that, I'll cry a little bit, but move hastily on, and we will be back in 2 weeks with some delicious free content and covering the final 3 games of the Adepticon Grand Tournament, Ben. And who knows, by the time you listen to that episode, there may even have been a Games Workshop official preview of something saucy.
Maybe. Ooh, that'll be cool.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about that. Who's to say?
And if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us that like, ring that bell. Yeah. We do appreciate it.
Got to do the YouTube stuff now, I guess. Yep, we appreciate it all, and we will be back. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no microbubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.